Hey everyone, welcome to week 4. We're talking about something that goes hand in hand with week 3. Obviously, we talked about choices last week. Today we're going to talk about accountability. And the thing about accountability is you need it. Everybody needs that to be accountable, specifically when we don't make the best choices. So obviously last week we were talking about trying to make good choices, which is always the preferable option, right? We always want to make good choices. However, because we're human and because a lot of times we make feeling-based choices rather than thoughtful choices or moral choices, we don't always make the best choices. And as someone who recently, 2-3 years ago, didn't make the best moral choices, sort of feel uniquely qualified to talk about accountability specifically, because I do feel that accountability is not something I struggle in. So also, side note, don't know if you noticed, but I did figure out that if you turn the camera, you get a better view. So there we go. Talking about accountability. Obviously, we have free will, and we have free will so that we can make the best choices. But also, we have free will to be accountable for when we don't make the best choices. And accountability is really just taking that ownership and saying, I did this. I did this. I shouldn't have done it. I wasn't the victim. I wasn't, coerced into doing this. I did this. And take it one step further, I'm sorry about that, right? It is weirdly difficult for us to be accountable. I don't know why we struggle so much with just being like, hey, listen, I was wrong. I messed up. I'm sorry, right? So we get into this sort of, I alluded to a little bit last week, this victim or victor kind of mentality, where if you are always blaming other people, right? Because that's the flip side of being accountable is blame, right? We live in a society that we blame, we shame, we play games, like it's just not good. Whereas the sort of emotionally mature, growth-minded individual is going to champion accountability versus blame. So when you're blaming all the time, I had a 7th grade teacher, math teacher, who said, when you blame someone and you point the finger at someone, you have 3 more pointing back at you. And it always stuck with me. I never forgot it. And it's so true, right? It's that idea of, I think the Bible says, like, why are you looking at the toothpick in your brother's eye when you have a beam, a literal like telephone pole in your own? We do this a lot, where if we focus out and we point at someone else, we're not focusing on ourselves, and it seems like no one else is. And the problem with that is that it's just another distraction. Blaming is just sorry, my bra showing, guys. Blaming is just another distraction tactic, right? We're so good at distracting ourselves from ourselves. We look at everything and anything so that we're looking outward instead of looking inward. And that's our physical appearance. That's other people's physical appearances. That's what people have. That's what people do. That's what people say. That's TV. That's, you name it, we do it. And then to go even a little bit further in it, we don't want to be accountable to the point where we self-medicate. That's why, not why, that's one of the reasons why people, sometimes turn to alcohol. They have a lot of inner demons that they can't quite shut up, but they don't want to face. And they certainly don't want to say, hey, I did this, right? When I was in the wake of everything that happened, I did. I couldn't sleep. It was a terrible thing. For me, what I did, I violated my own moral code, and I knew that. And so it was very easy for me to say I was wrong. Because it was just the law said I was wrong. But more than the law saying I was wrong, it has to be an internal thing. And I knew, I was. And I had a hard time sleeping because I had a hard time living with myself. And I was working at Bottle King at the time. And I started bringing home more alcohol, and I was just kind of saying, oh, I'm going to sample this, I'm going to sample this. And I want to get to be, the best at my trade. But really what I was doing is trying to quell my inner demons without talking about them, without acknowledging them, and without really just being accountable for like, hey, I did this. So what happens when you are accountable is you're not blaming anybody else. But this great thing happens too, which kind of ties into self-worth, which we talked about in week 2, which is you don't allow anyone to shame you. Because when you own up to a thing, you're like, yeah, I did this and it sucks and I wish I could change it, but I can't, and I absolutely refuse to let anybody, hold on one second. Babe, I'm broadcasting. This is what happens when you actually like are accountable and authentic. Interruptions occur. We're making sauce right now. Trying to eat healthy and get the quarantine 15 off, which I have put on and I'm not happy about. Anyway, as I was saying, it's very easy when you're not being accountable to blame and take on shame because you don't want to acknowledge that you did a thing. You don't want to acknowledge that you made a bad decision, right? And we're human. And that was a thing I really struggled with, was being human, right? Because I just kind of expected myself to always perform, always do the right thing, 100%. And that's not healthy either. So I was really surprised when, you know, I made this huge mistake and I was like, man, I can't even accept myself. I can't even, you know, love myself. How is anyone else supposed to love me? And then there were people in my corner who were like, yeah, well, you know, you made a mistake. It's kind of a big one, but it's a mistake. You're human. And I was like, which of course we can do for a lot of other people. It's very easy for me to be like, oh yeah, you messed up, no big deal. My students, it was very easy for me to be like, oh yeah, no problem, that's fine. But I can never cut myself that kind of a slack. And it's just because we hold ourselves sometimes to a high standard while never actually getting acquainted with ourselves, right? So we hold for me at least, you know, I can only speak from my perspective, which on one hand is limited, and on the other hand is sort of, like I said, uniquely qualified because I've been some places now that maybe other people haven't. So that you never get there, listen up. But yeah, so I kind of needed to get in touch with myself and my emotions and what I was doing. And I needed to kind of know myself, and then that accountability gets easier. Because once you know yourself, you're not really judged by your actions or what you do, which is another topic for another day. You judge yourself by who you are, and who you are is human. And humans are fallible. We make mistakes. That's why Jesus said in the Bible, forgive your neighbor 7 times, 70 times. Like that's 490 times, right? Like we just need to forgive people all the time. When we forgive people, it's more for us even than for them. And when we forgive ourselves, it's more for us than for anybody else. Because after a while, I got to thinking like, I don't even know who cares about this thing anymore, but I still care. And I had to make peace with myself. And accountability was a huge part in that, because I was trying to blame for a little while. I was trying to blame the situation, and I was trying to blame the prosecutor, and I was trying to blame the kid, and I was trying to blame all these things and all these people. And while it's true, in my mind anyway, it does take 2 to tango, ultimately, I was in the wrong. Doesn't matter who else was wrong. Doesn't matter if anyone else was wrong. I was wrong. And once I came to that place of like, okay, I did a thing and it was bad. What now? Forgiveness automatically kind of comes next, because when you acknowledge that and you're accountable for that, and when you're acknowledging and you're accountable for that, you are sort of freeing to yourself. Here's the thing that we need to know and kind of internalize. We can't acknowledge it for anybody else, right? So that's the beam pointing at the other eye. And I noticed a lot of this in my arguments with Tom, that I was so quick to be like, oh, well, you do this and you didn't do that and you did this thing. And what I needed to do was be like, okay, I actually feel like this. I statements are super important. And those people who teach like kindergarten classes and first grade classes, and you know, I wasn't certified K-6 because I maybe should have been, but I wouldn't have been authentic because I didn't know anything, right? Probably if you have any K-6 teachers out there, or like K-3, the I feel statements you're probably pretty well versed in. I wasn't. Took therapy for that. I statements are magical because it brings the accountability back on you. And so saying, I did this, I feel this way, I wish this thing happened this way, I'm sorry. Like, those are all revolutionary kind of a things for a relationship. I can't stand this glare, so I'm gonna just take my glasses off because the glare that I'm getting just is bothering me. Obviously, you see I have no makeup on. This is just natural me coming at you live. But yeah, when you're accountable, you do kind of own your I, right? You own your I. And it's hard to do. Like, it sounds so easy to just be like, okay, yeah, I did this. I feel this way. And we just don't like to. Example, if you're in a fight with somebody, right? I'll take from last week, if anybody was listening to the podcast, I have a friend that I don't really consider a friend anymore. We went through a kind of a weird thing, and now we're both kind of like, where do we go from here? We want to say like, well, she shouldn't be feeling this way, or she shouldn't treat me like that, right? But what we need to say is, okay, I'm hurt by this, right? Vulnerability is another topic for another day, but like, we have a hard time. I have a hard time admitting I'm hurt by this. I feel upset. I feel frustrated. I feel not good enough. I feel rejected, right? We don't want to have those conversations. We don't want to admit that to ourselves, right? We're like, I'm fine. I got this. No big deal, you know? Right? We don't like to do that. I know I didn't like to do that. I still don't really like to do that, but I'm getting better at it because growth happens at the place where you start to learn yourself. That's where growth starts. When you start to learn yourself, you can start to grow. Unfortunately, you can't really know or grow until you start to acknowledge what you are and what you have, right? And what you are is a human. What you have is emotions. And what happens is sometimes we stop growing at this place of development when we get hurt. And a lot of us get hurt when we're kids, you know, like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I know for me, and I've talked about this track in my head, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me. That came when I was 5. You know, you don't know any better as a kid. And this kind of idea of never let them see you sweat, you know, I don't want to say like, I don't know what I did wrong, but kind of that mentality and not being accountable, like that started when I was a kid too. You know, like, oh, well, I didn't do it. I didn't mean to do it. Well, it doesn't matter. You still did it, right? And that's a huge thing too, because we do. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't know I was doing it. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. Those are still like not being accountable. Those are still not excuses. Or those are still excuses and not accountability, right? So it's very easy to tell you. Honestly, accountability is so easy. It's an easy topic. It's very easy to say what is accountability and what is not accountability. So why is it so hard? Well, it's hard because it takes acknowledging to ourselves that we were in the wrong. Sometimes, like, you know, I'm obviously a Christian, I'll try to just keep the peace. You know, we're supposed to be as peaceful as we can be given the situation. And sometimes, like, there's a real strength in being the first to, like, listen, I was wrong, I was sorry. The odds of 2 people getting in a fight and one person being completely wrong and the other person having no part of it is, like, very slim to none. Very, very slim to none. Because even if it doesn't start off as a sort of like, example, me and Tom got into a fight the other day, and what he got upset about was, I don't even know, nothing. I think I took a picture of dinner and he was annoyed. I don't even know. It was like nothing. And it ended up being because he was like hot and cranky, had a bad day at work, right? It's always all these other underlying issues. But so he was wrong in that moment. And instead of me being like, whoa, chill, I was like super upset. I don't know why. I was very emotional last week. I think it was last week. And I didn't tell him I was wrong. So my whole demeanor's changed. Obviously, I'm sad. I'm like crying out by the pond. My whole demeanor has changed. And I don't tell him because I still struggle with telling, you know what I mean? It's a hard thing. It took 31 years to get us to this point. It's a hard thing to talk about how I'm feeling and open up like that. But that opening up process leads us to accountability. And while he might have been wrong at the start, now we're both wrong. Because I made a choice, right, last week. I made a choice not to share with him why I was upset. And now I am accountable for the fact that we're not talking all night into the next morning. And we don't realize it. You know what I mean? We can dissect literally any altercation with any human and take it down to 3 things: self-worth, choices, and accountability. That's why I want to start there, because really, like, my self-worth was smaller. I felt like I wasn't worth his time or whatever I was upset about. I don't even remember now. And I made choices not to share with him. And then now I'm accountable for our fight. Even though he was the one that started it, right? No, he was the one that originally did something that was like, we don't need to do that. So it's very easy. And for those of you who have mastered this, congratulations. I'm in awe of you. I'm just telling you from what I've learned. Accountability is a bitter pill. It's a tough pill to swallow. It's a tough pill to take. It's a tough pill to talk about. It's not, I don't want to say fun, you know what I mean? But it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. Saying you're wrong is the hard path. And last week I posted on Sun and Sand, like, I came up with this quote, and I can't quote myself verbatim. Something along the lines of, choose the hard path, that's often the better one. That might have been it, actually. Choose the hard path, that's often the better one. Choosing the hard path is being accountable. It is saying I was wrong. It is saying I'm sorry. That is weirdly enough the hard path. It's so much easier to be like, you did this. You're the reason this isn't working out. You're the reason, right? So much easier to do that. And it's not the right way. It's the poor choice, right? So being accountable is the better choice. The harder choice, definitely, but the better choice. So we'll be talking accountability all week. And we're not at a place yet where questions are coming or any of that until the podcast, but I did, just so you guys know what's happening, I did set up Patreon, which is support for the show. If you want to, you know, contribute in that way and you partner in that way, it's there's a lot of behind the scenes background footage that is just my own insights and things that I don't share. I don't know if those of you who are teachers or preachers or anybody really who's in academia, you know that you always know more than you can share. So on every platform, which is, you know, the YouTube, the Instagram, the blog, and the podcast, there's always more. There's always more depth that can be gone into. And sometimes you have to keep it sort of very shallow in the surface level, and sometimes you can kind of go in deeper. On Patreon, it's almost like a community where we can go in a little bit deeper. So that's for people who are like really interested in having those one-on-one conversations and things like that. So I just set that up. So check it out. And everything else is just going to stay normal, just coming to you. Obviously, Mondays we're on the YouTube, and then Tuesdays we're on the Instagram. Wednesdays we're on the blog, and then Thursdays we're doing Instagram, and then Fridays we are on the podcast. So that's where we're at right now. Stay accountable, and I'll do the same. Bye, guys.